German police say a 26-year-old Syrian man has confessed to carrying out a knife attack in the western city of Solingen that killed 3 people and injured 8 others. Earlier, the so-called Islamic State claimed it was behind Friday night's attack on a festival, but provided no evidence. Police and prosecutors report that the suspect turned himself in.
Police officers move in on a refugee center in Solingen. They detained 1 man and questioned several others.
We are getting a lot of tips and we have to investigate every single one of them. When a tip becomes more concrete, then we take action. We have to wait for the results of this investigation and then we can say more.
Earlier, the center of Solingen was cordoned off and the search for the killer widened. The attack during a diversity festival has left the city in shock.
We in Solingen are full of horror and full of sadness. What happened in our city yesterday hasn't allowed any of us to sleep.
Thousands were enjoying the evening at Solingen's Fronhof Square when a man began stabbing passers-by with a knife. Police asked festival goers to send in videos and photos.
This attack was meant to spread terror. Terror among people celebrating peacefully together. They wanted to target communal celebrations, celebrations that are so typical of this city, more so than almost anywhere else.
The festival was celebrating Solingen's 650th anniversary. Remaining events have been cancelled, but political leaders appealed for unity.
That's why I'm making an urgent appeal. Don't let the hate of this terrible event influence the community. In these difficult hours, we must stand together.
As the investigation proceeds, Solingen is a city in mourning.
DW reporter Louis Zanders has been in Solingen covering this story and joins us now. Louis, again, here's what we know. The alleged perpetrator is in custody, but there have also been 2 other arrests. What can you tell us about all the suspects?
Well, last night, the main suspect was arrested. He turned himself in, and the reason why he's believed to be the main suspect is because he reportedly confessed to having committed the attack and was also allegedly wearing the clothes that he had committed the attack in. So there was still, allegedly and reportedly blood on the clothes that he was wearing. And he is reported to have been a Syrian who came to Germany seeking asylum in 2022. He initially received kind of this protective kind of residency here, which allows him to stay in the country until his asylum application is processed. And for the moment, we don't know much more. Police are still kind of being a bit vague on the details as they continue their investigations. Now, for the other 2, one of the suspects, one of the first arrests yesterday was of a 15-year-old who allegedly had heard that the attack was being prepared, and he is being detained on, he's being detained for suspicion of not, reporting the attack, while the second one was an arrest at a refugee center in Solingen. And we don't know too much more about that one, but that one came a little bit later on in the day. So from what we know, there have been 3 arrests, and the main suspect is in detention, according to authorities. And
just very quickly, Louis, and I know you don't necessarily have all the answers right now, but do we know whether all 3 of these suspects knew each other? Just quickly.
Unfortunately, I don't have that information, and I don't believe the police have released it.
Understood.
It's unclear whether there was any communication between, for example, the 15-year-old and the main suspect, but from my understanding, that would be maybe the clearest connection. If there's
right, that main suspect that you're referring to, he was a resident of the local refugee center, we understand. What are you hearing there on the ground about the dynamic between asylum seekers and the local residents?
Well, it's something that's been a part of the national debate for years now. And here there have been tensions for years, as in other places in Germany. Now, what I can say is that this festival, where the attack, what happened, that was meant to kind of bring together the community. It was, came under the banner of diversity. Solingen has had a history of, violence where, migrants were targeted. For example, the Solingen 1993 attacks, and so this was, a moment for the community to kind of look beyond that. Now, are there still tensions? Of course there are. And yesterday, one of my colleagues spoke to someone who blamed these attacks on the 2015 migration. Merkel's decision, German Chancellor Merkel's decision to allow refugees into the country, and so. There is, this does form part of the debate that's happening in Germany, and those tensions are real, and they're happening on the ground today.
That's DW's Lewis Sanders there in Solingen. Many, many thanks as always, Lewis.
Thank you.
For more analysis, I'm joined by Raphael Bossong, who is a political scientist and deputy head of the research division of the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Welcome to DW, sir. First question for you. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for this attack. Would the details of this incident be consistent with its MO?
In general terms, yes. I mean, the Islamic State and various other groups, but particularly the IS, has for long used this strategy to say, no, strike them wherever you can with whatever means you have at hand, including very simple ones like this kind of knife attack. But it is, on some other level, a bit more questionable because so far we haven't seen a personal statement, a recorded statement by the attacker claiming allegiance to the IS, which was previously usually the case with other attacks. And in general, also, there is, of course, a debate how active the IS in various areas still is. There has been a renewed concern with the IS branch from Afghanistan and Pakistan area. This is a general claim by the IS from Syria, and this is a bit of a surprise, but in general it's plausible, but we need more information to confirm it.
We might be on the same wavelength because I think you're bleeding into perhaps my second question here. Some have doubted Islamic State's claim. Why? I mean, do you essentially just answer it, or is there more to say on that?
Well, there could be one or two extra points that, yeah, as I said, like we don't have a real clear evidence base other than the statement, which in practical terms appear to be from the usual channels and in that sense authentic. But there is no deeper connection yet with the attacker and the IS. I mean, this is something, of course, the authorities will look into very intensively in the next hours and days, but so far we don't know more. And this general claim that this is a revenge or an attack due to the situation in Gaza on the Palestinian front is also somewhat questionable because previously the IS didn't really have a particular connection with this conflict and or with Hamas. But otherwise, of course, you could say generally the situation is such that there is a climate of violence and a climate of trying to use any conflict to redraw attention to the IS and its cause.
Raphael, I'm curious. Legislators had already been discussing a review of public safety laws. How likely is it this incident will now lead to some kind of wide ban on knives in public?
Well, I mean, this is kind of, I don't want to be cynical, but the ritual in a way that after every incident there is a search for new measures. And in all likelihood, yes, there will probably be some toughening up of laws on the carrying of knives. As you said, this has been in the debate for some time already, particularly after the stabbing of a policeman, the fatal one in June this year in Germany. But frankly, I don't see really the very big benefit of it, because on one level, we already have relatively strict, I mean, they can still be stricter, but relatively strict laws. Knives over 12 centimeter length are anyhow forbidden, and then there is additional possibilities to ban knives from particular locations that are even as small as 4 centimeters. The question is really how to implement it and to enforce it, and to have the police and the kind of regulations that are actually trustworthy and realistic. And in an open sort of festival like this, I think it's very, very hard to really monitor it all. So yes, legal changes may be coming, but I think it's really the practice that is decisive.
You might have heard frustration that there was little to no surveillance film of the festival that night, and by extension, images of the suspect. Do you see public law enforcement's stance on surveillance changing due to this attack?
Well, again, this is also a long-standing debate, and I've already seen calls for more CCTV. Of course, one can discuss sort of some adjustments here, that there will be more lenient permissions to have sort of mobile cameras in some kind of locations and some public events. But on the other hand, I personally would think it's out of proportion to call now for a massive expansion of CCTVs. We don't want to live in a, sorry for the parallel Chinese state where there is a CCTV camera everywhere. And even so, even if you had these CCTVs, they may not stop somebody determined. And this person now turned himself in. So I don't think this is really the way forward. It may help at some points to get a better and quicker sort of search for a manhunt. But as I said, it won't deter a determined terrorist from carrying out these things.
Our thanks to the time and perspective of political scientist Raphael Bossong. Many, many thanks again.
Welcome.
For more analysis, I'm joined by DW security correspondent Thomas Sparrow here in the studio with me. Thomas, of course, again, the Islamic State has claimed responsibility for this attack. Are the details of this attack consistent with the way IS operates?
To a large extent, yes. In fact, the so-called Islamic State has told its soldiers, as they describe them, to basically carry out attacks in any way they can. So essentially also by using knives. And after the attack, the so-called Islamic State did claim responsibility. But as you yourself have indicated, this is not confirmed yet. There's also, for example, something missing, which is also common in the modus operandi of the Islamic State, which is the attacker himself or herself basically also claiming responsibility by publishing a video or publishing a statement or something like that. We haven't seen this in this particular case. It's important to stress that authorities here in Germany are investigating now whether the main suspect does belong to the so-called Islamic State. This case has now been taken over by the federal public prosecutor, and this is normally the procedure when they believe that this is terror-related. So this is sort of the normal procedure in Germany when authorities believe that the attack had a political motivation or other motivation, that it was targeted, that it was on purpose, and that's basically what they're trying to investigate now with the main suspect. Authorities do believe that there may be a connection to Islamic State, but they have not yet been able to confirm that.
You know, as more details come out, and as I sit here talking to you, I realize that many people will never be able to make sense of this attack or attacks like this. But there's another layer here, an irony that strikes me. The community was celebrating diversity. The people who might have been associated with this attack were foreigners applying for asylum here. What do you make of that irony?
Well, it is an irony indeed, but that is something that is up for authorities to also investigate further when, for example, they speak to the main suspect, when the main suspect is brought before the public prosecutor, when they can find out more about his specific motivations, when they can confirm, for example, the link, direct or indirect, with the so-called Islamic State. If we're talking about terror, there are specific elements that are basically always present when we're talking about terror compared to other forms of violence. It has to be against civilians that are not part of any kind of process. It has to be targeted, it has to be on purpose, it has to have a motivation that is, for example, political, ideological, religious, and that is something that authorities are now going to try and bring together. Was there a political motivation, a religious motivation, an ideological motivation? Was it indeed targeted, yes or no? It seems from the information that has been released that it was targeted. Apparently, the attacker went straight for the throats of those who he attacked. So these are all elements that are ultimately going to be investigated in the course of the next few days.
Many, many thanks, as always, to DW's Thomas Sparrow.